Hey there, it's Hilardis again. Today we're going to be looking at the executive branch. All right, some people look at the executive branch as the most important branch, but hopefully you've learned throughout these modules that we have this little thing called checks and balances, so it's really not. But you know what? Let's take a look at it anyways. All right, big ideas. The Constitution gives the executive branch the power to execute or implement laws. So a big thing that you need to take out of this unit is that the job of the executive branch is to enforce the laws. They're like the police officers. They enforce the laws that the legislative branch passes. The president holds one of the most powerful and important offices in the entire world. The president fills many different roles, which we're going to be talking about here. The president and Congress have important roles in making foreign policy, and thousands of employees and advisors help the president. Okay, formal qualifications. So these are formal qualifications. The Constitution states that the president must be at least 35 years old, must be a native-born American citizen. So they must have been either born of an American citizen, so the mom could be an American citizen, but the dad could not be an American citizen. They could still be considered American. Or the individual could be born in the United States, which would make them an American citizen. But you can't come in, take a citizenship test, and then be an American citizen. Well, you would be an American citizen, but you couldn't be president. And you have to be a resident of the United States for at least 14 years. Okay, characteristics of a president. All of our presidents, at least so far, have been male. All but one president has been Christian. Most have college educations. Many have been lawyers, and most have come from the large states with large populations, which would make sense with our executive branch. You would want to bring somebody in that has the power to pull that large state. That's why you see a lot of presidents from Texas, New York, and California. We have some first. John Kennedy. He was our first Catholic president, so it wasn't until 1960 that we had our first Catholic president. Geraldine Ferraro was the first female on a ticket. Joe Lieberman, there at the bottom you can see, was the first Jewish candidate on a ticket. And Barack Obama was the first African American on the ticket and the first African American president in general. Okay, our elections. Elections are held every 4 years and are years divisible by 4, meaning 2000, 2004, 2008, 2016, and so on. With presidential elections, we do not use a popular vote. We use an indirect method called the Electoral College, which we will be talking about a little bit later. Most votes doesn't necessarily mean that you win. So in 2000, Al Gore won the popular vote, so more people voted for him, but because George Bush won more electoral college states, or the bigger states, he wound up winning the presidency. A lot of people look at this and believe that we should be picking our president solely on popular vote. Okay, our electoral college. So each state appoints electors who are pledged to a candidate. All right. Each state, it's depending on their population and the number of senators they have. They add that up, and that's the number that they have for the Electoral College. So California has 55 Electoral College votes because they have a lot of representatives and a lot of population. And then you take, let's say, North and South Dakota. They have 3. They don't have as big of a population, therefore they don't have as big of a say in the Electoral College. When you vote for a candidate, you're actually voting for a list of electors that pledge for your candidate. So you're really voting for somebody to vote for you. States have the same number of electors as they do in the Congress, like I said. Most states are winner-take-all, meaning, so in Michigan, let's say Obama, he won by like 3 votes. Obama would then get all 16 electoral college votes, even though he only won by a very slim margin. There are 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, that do it a different way. They split up their votes depending on the percentage. So if you only won by 2 votes, you're only going to get a little bit more of the Electoral College numbers than the other person running. Overall, there are 538 possible votes. You need 270 to win. 538 comes from 435 representatives, 100 senators, and 3 votes for Washington, D.C. Okay, the president. They have 4-year terms. The 22nd Amendment limits a person to 2-year terms. Before that, it was always kind of like an unwritten rule because George Washington was only there for 2 terms, so everybody else was going to be there. But FDR changed that. He was in there for, well, he was technically in there for, 3.5 terms, but he was elected to 4 terms. They get paid $400,000 a year plus a $50,000 expense account. They have access to the White House and Camp David, which is like a getaway. They have an 80-person staff to help them out, and they have access to Air Force One and all the other one things. So they have like a personal boat that they can use, a personal helicopter that they can use. Presidential succession. So the 25th Amendment explains the succession. So if the president dies, who's going to be president afterwards? So if the president dies, the vice president then becomes president. If the president and vice president both, something happens to them, then the Speaker of the House is then going to be president. And then the Secretary of State, and then so on and so forth. It goes into the cabinet members. Now, constitutional powers. The president can veto bills. So this is what the president can do. So this could be under like a job description for the president. This is what you do. You can veto bills. You can call Congress into special sessions. You serve as commander-in-chief of the military. You receive leaders from foreign countries, so you meet with foreign leaders. You make treaties with other countries as long as it's approved by the Senate. You appoint cabinet members, federal judges, ambassadors, and other government officials with Senate approval, of course. And you can pardon or reduce penalties. So when Nixon resigned, he was going to probably be put in jail for breaking laws. But Gerald Ford wound up pardoning him, so he didn't have to go to prison. Okay, roles of the president. You have the chief executive. Okay, chief executive uses the 15 cabinet members to carry out or pass laws. So basically, the chief executive is like a CEO of a company. So he delegates work. You have the chief diplomat, directs foreign policy, making decisions about how the U.S. acts towards other countries. So a chief diplomat, he goes out there and he talks to other foreign leaders. Commander-in-chief. So he has the final say in really what the military does, even though that he's not allowed to technically declare war. Roles of the president, again, the legislative leader. He makes suggestions to Congress about what laws he would like to enact, but technically he's not allowed to push through laws. It has to be a congressman. He's the head of state, so he serves as the living symbol of the nation and visits with leaders of other countries. So head of state, what he would do is like he would light the Christmas tree, the American Christmas tree. So he would be the head of state. He's the living symbol. Okay, an economic leader. So he tries to figure out what our budget is going to be for that year. He's the party leader. Okay, he speaks for other people in their party to try to get them elected in other areas. Okay, foreign policy. Foreign policy is the nation's plan for dealing with other nations. This is very, very important. All right, the primary goal of American foreign policy is national security, keeping Americans safe. Many presidents have also made decisions dealing with international trade and efforts to generate more wealth. Really, the way that you have to look at this is foreign policy really has to do with 3 things. Well, 4 things. Keeping the United States safe. Keeping the world safe. Making sure that the United States is making money. and making sure that the world is making money. Okay, foreign policy can get a little messy. There are different ways that foreign policy can be used, which we're going to be going through here in a second. Okay, the main departments that deal with foreign policy are the State Department, the Defense Department, the Central Intelligence Agencies, and the National Security Council. The State Department is kind of like the president's right-hand man. So they go out and they deal with other diplomats. The Defense Department is their left hand there. So you have our right hand with is diplomacy. Your left hand is military. Okay, tools for foreign policy. So you had to ask yourself, well, how does the United States use foreign policy? So they can use treaties or executive agreements. So treaties are official agreements. Okay, they're actually signed into law. All right, so we have a treaty with this nation. The legislative branch passed it through. We're good to go. An executive agreement is kind of like a verbal commitment. Okay, you verbally said that, you know what, we're fine, but you have nothing written down. Ambassadors, sending ambassadors to different countries. So if something happens in that country, instead of the president always having to fly to a different country, you have an ambassador there to represent you. Foreign aid. So in Haiti, when Haiti was hit by that terrible earthquake, the United States sent billions of dollars of foreign aid. Trade sanctions and embargoes. So we won't trade with somebody, which will hurt their economy and hopefully stop them from doing whatever they were doing. And finally, military force. Okay, we have the strongest military in the world. Okay, the cabinet. The cabinet is a group of advisors that includes 15 top-level executive departments, and the vice president is in there as well. So there are 16 cabinet members. There's no mention of a cabinet in the Constitution. Basically, what the president's doing with the cabinet is he's delegating work. Originally, there was only 4 cabinet members. There was the Attorney General, which is the Justice Department, Secretary of Treasury, the Department of War, which is now called Defense, and the Department of State. Okay, the Vice President and the First Lady. The great thing about being the Vice President is, depending on the president, sometimes you might not have too much to do. Really, your job as Vice President is to hopefully just, you wait for the president to die, almost. That's really your only job. You can advise the president, you may work on specific issues, but your main job is to back up the president if anything happens to him. The First Lady has no real official government role, but they've always tried to work on special projects. So Michelle Obama, her special project is trying to make America healthier. Before that, you had Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, big thing was healthcare. So they really have no government role, but they're always trying to do something. It really started with Eleanor Roosevelt. She was a major philanthropist. There we go. And then finally, the executive branch must carry out the laws passed by Congress. Okay, even if they do not like the law, they have to carry out those laws. They have to decide how to apply laws to daily life. Okay, so even though there's a law out there saying that you can't text and drive, if the executive branch or the police have no way of enforcing that, they can't really enforce the law. They have to come up with a way to enforce that law, to regulate things. So the FCC is in charge of regulating radio and TV. All right, you have the IRS that's in charge of regulating tax returns and things like that. Okay, independent agencies. Really, you don't need to know much of this. Okay, government workers. And then our spoil system. This is a big one. All right, your spoil system. Before, the president could really just pick whoever they wanted to be on their cabinet. Now we have the merit system. You actually have to be qualified to have that position. You can't be like the president's deadbeat brother-in-law.